The stage was set, the cameras rolling, and America was watching, not with popcorn. You could feel it in the way the band wrapped up their jazzy little number, a half-beat too fast, in the way the audience's applause felt more like anticipation than celebration, and especially in the way Jimmy Kimmel adjusted his suit jacket, twice before even speaking. "Tonight," Jimmy began, smiling into the camera, "we've got a legend in the house, the man who made mumbling inspirational. Rocky himself, Rambo, a guy whose fists have their own IMDb page." He gestured grandly. "Sylvester Stallone." The crowd erupted, not because of Jimmy's joke, but because the man himself had just stepped out from behind the curtain. Stallone, towering, broad-shouldered, dignified, dressed in a crisp, tailored maroon shirt under a black blazer that caught the light just enough to remind you this man didn't need sequins to shine. His gait was steady, like a man walking into a courtroom, or a ring, and maybe he was. The audience stood. Some cheered, some recorded, a few just stared. Because even if you didn't love his movies, you knew what he stood for. "To be here," he said in that gravel-heavy voice, the kind that didn't need to shout to command a room. "Good to have you, Sly. I mean, I was told we were getting wisdom experience." Stallone gave a small chuckle. "Well," he said, leaning in just slightly, "I left the shake backstage. Didn't want to make your green juice feel inadequate." A few louder laughs now. Jimmy smirked. "Touche." Then he tilted his head, watching Stallone with that playful menace he'd mastered. "So," Jimmy said, "this new movie, plot?" The crowd titter-ed. Stallone didn't flinch. "It's a story about redemption," he replied, voice calm, precise, "about a man confronting what's broken in him, about pain, healing, and what it means to get back up." Jimmy widened his eyes theatrically. "Deep," he said. "Did Rambo teach you that, or Rocky?" Stallone's smile barely moved. "Funny?" he said. "I always thought comedy was supposed to punch up, not down." The air shifted, something just cracked beneath the surface. A few audience members exchanged glances. The laughter thinned out. Jimmy tried to keep it light. "I only hit when it's scripted." Laughter again, uneasy this time. The energy on stage was no longer late night. It was something closer to courtroom drama. And listen, if you're watching this moment right now, live or on a clip, you can feel what's happening. The real tension doesn't come from shouting. It comes from restraint. From two men who realize this is no longer a performance. By the way, if you haven't already liked this video, hit that thumbs up. Because what's about to unfold, it's not just entertainment. It's a mirror of pride, of legacy, of what happens when you poke too hard at someone who spent their life fighting to be heard. And if you're not subscribed, you're going to want to be. This isn't just a late-night interview. It's an implosion, unfolding live. Back on stage, Jimmy was leaning forward now, sensing the spark. "Let's rewind," he said. "The original Rocky script, you wrote that in, what, 3 days? What happened? Did you run out of crayons?" A murmur, not laughter. Something else. Stallone tilted his head, paused. "Selling my dog for food, crayons weren't the priority." Silence. Even Jimmy blinked, stalled. He hadn't expected that. Stallone leaned forward. "You know, Jimmy," he said quietly, "sometimes you crack jokes, other times you crack dignity. You might want to check which one you're doing tonight." The crowd shifted in their seats. This wasn't banter anymore. Jimmy chuckled nervously. "You should do stand-up, Sly." That comeback was almost intelligible. Stallone didn't blink. "And you should try sincerity sometime. I promise. It won't kill your ratings." OHHHHH. The audience exploded. Jimmy smiled tight, hiding the jab, but his face twitched just for a second. He straightened up. "Let's be honest, Sly. You've made more sequels than Hollywood's made. New ideas. Ever think of, I don't know, letting it go?" Crossed his legs. "I keep telling stories people want to hear," he said. "Maybe that's what bothers you." Louder murmurs now, not just laughs agreement. Jimmy fired back. "Or maybe it's because you keep playing the same guy with a new haircut." Stallone's eyes flashed. He didn't smile. Better than being a new haircut with the same jokes. Boom, the audience howled. But under the laughter was something new. Allegiance. Jimmy blinked. Okay, but seriously, Isn't there a part of you that worries you've become a punchline? Movie, it was hope. For people with nothing. And you, the crowd cheered. Some stood. You could feel it. Jimmy felt it too. He tried again. But come on, you're a millionaire now. You're not the underdog anymore. Isn't that narrative just convenient now? Stallone turned slowly. His voice dipped low. Struggle doesn't vanish with a paycheck. It leaves scars. And those scars, they remind you how to spot when someone's using your life as a punchline. Silence. Total dot. Jimmy cleared his throat. You think I'm using you? Stallone stared directly at him. You tell me. 1 beat, .2, .3, then Jimmy forced a laugh. Well, folks, I didn't realize we booked a philosophy major tonight. Stallone's jaw clenched. Funny, he said. I thought we booked a host. The crowd exploded. The camera cut to the audience. Some were laughing, some shaking their heads, others whispering to one another like school kids witnessing a fight that just crossed a line. Jimmy was losing control, and Stallone wasn't even sweating. Jimmy leaned forward again, desperate to pivot. Let's talk critics. Some say your career is just nostalgia now, that without the past, you're not much in the present. Legends work, and I don't need to relive the past. I built it. The audience burst into applause, thunderous, not polite, not prompted. Real Jimmy swallowed. His smile faltered. Come on, Sly, can't you take a joke? Stallone leaned in, just slightly. Can you take the truth? And then, silence. The kind that bends time. The kind you remember days later. The kind that changes careers. The red light on the camera was still blinking, the nation still watching. But Jimmy, for the first time, had nothing. He looked at the crew, at the teleprompter, at anything but the man beside him. We'll be right back after this short break, he said, voice too bright, too fast. If Stallone doesn't knock me out before then, the music played, but no one. In that studio, no one at home believed it was just a break. They all knew the real show was just beginning. The lights snapped back on. The applause sign flickered above the audience like a commandment, but no one was obeying it. Instead, there was a hush, a quiet tension that hummed like an electric current beneath the studio floor. Jimmy straightened, his jacket too fast. His polished grin came back, but now it looked practiced, forced. We're back with the one and only Sylvester Stallone, he said, and his voice had that brittle edge, the kind that cracks under pressure. Voice therapy. The man, the myth, the 80-something-year-old action figure. Few people chuckled, but it was hollow. Like a laugh track where the timing's just slightly off. Stallone didn't even blink. Better to be molded in stone than made of plastic. Jimmy, the studio crowd erupted. Not with giggles, with thunder. Applause that echoed with the weight of something deeper than amusement. Respect, Jimmy blinked. His smile stiffened. Well, I have to say, he tried. Your fans are loyal. Almost aggressively so, like they still think you're that scrappy underdog from Philly. I am, Stallone said, plain and slow. I just wear better shoes now. A few people clapped. Jimmy laughed too hard. But, come on, Sly, haven't we moved past the whole underdog thing? Isn't it time to hang up the gloves, literally and metaphorically? Stallone turned his body slightly, facing Jimmy head-on. Ever tell a soldier to hang up his boots because the war makes you uncomfortable? Jimmy opened his mouth, then closed it. The air got thick. The audience shifted in their seats. This wasn't about movies anymore. This was about something raw, sacred, something Stallone had bled for, and Jimmy had just mocked with a punchline. Jimmy recovered. Or tried to, I don't think, making Rocky IX qualifies as war, he said, smirking again. It does, Stallone answered, when you're fighting cynicism, apathy, and the belief that people like me, people from nowhere, can't. Still inspire. The applause roared, louder now. Jimmy flinched. But you're rich now, Jimmy snapped. Successful. Doesn't that cheapen the struggle narrative? No, Stallone said, because struggle doesn't care about your net worth. It finds you, even when the cameras are off. Especially then, Jimmy tried to spin. So what you're saying is, it's not ego, it's mission. Stallone leaned forward, slow as an avalanche. It's responsibility. To remind people you don't stop just because the world tells you to. You stop when you decide you're done. Another cheer. A woman in the second row stood, clapping furiously. Jimmy nodded quickly, trying. to regain footing, spoken like a man trying to sell a box office ticket. There it was. The smile disappeared from Stallone's face. "You know, Jimmy," he said, voice low, sharp as a blade, "you keep trying to turn this into a punchline. Maybe because deep down, you're afraid someone might actually take me. Seriously." A wave of gasps rippled through the room. Jimmy leaned back. His hands were tense now, fingers twitching. "You want to know what scares me, Sly?" he asked, voice lower. "It's that people think your on-screen persona is who you are. That Rocky is real." And Stallone.com deliberate leaned. "In Rocky is real," he said. "Not because I played him, but because millions of people saw themselves in him. He's a mirror. Jimmy. Something you clearly avoid looking into." Dead silence. The audience was stone still. Then, movement.Jimmy leaned back, clapped his hand slowly, mocking. "Well, that's one hell of a monologue," he said. "I give it 3.5 stars. Stallone's voice didn't rise, didn't need to. I wasn't performing." A moment passed, and then Jimmy tried to laugh again. Okay. You win this round, Shakespeare. But tell me, what's next for you? A line of anti-aging supplements? A reality show? Keeping up with the comebacks?" Some people laughed. Most didn't. Stallone exhaled slowly. "You sit in that chair," he said, "and you poke fun like it's armor. But at some point, the jokes stop being clever. They just become noise." Jimmy looked up sharply. "It's just TV, man. You know that. Maybe that's the problem," Stallone said. "You treat everything like a punchline. Even people who came here with a story worth telling." Gasps. A man in the front row muttered "Jesus Christ" under his breath. A producer off camera gestured for the floor manager. The tension was spiraling. Jimmy held his hands up. "Don't be so sensitive, Sly. You've taken real punches. Surely. You can take a few words." Stallone stood, slow, controlled, but unmistakably final. The audience gasped. "I've taken enough," he said. "And I've given enough to this industry, to this audience, to the idea that storytelling still means something." Jimmy stood too, alarmed now. "Hey, where are you going? We're not done." Stallone turned to the audience. "But I am." The silence was total, then thunder. Applause broke out like a flood. Not polite, not shocked, righteous, fierce. Jimmy tried to wave it off. "Don't worry, folks. Next week we'll have someone with a sense of humor." Stallone paused at the edge of the stage, turned back. "Next week," he said, "try having someone with a soul." He disappeared behind the curtain. And for a moment, Jimmy was left standing there, alone in his own show. The cameras struggled to cut to commercial. The live feed scrambled. Some backstage crew clapped. Others watched in stunned silence. Backstage, a handheld camera caught Stallone walking past stunned staff, his jaw clenched, his posture straight as steel. A young intern whispered, "Thank you." And in that moment, a dozen tweets fired. "Out like bullets. #Stallone strikes back #. Kimmel crumble #Rocky still fights the world. Was watching not a fight, not an interview, a reckoning." The moment the stage door swung shut behind Stallone, it was like crossing into another world. No laughter, no applause signs, just the raw hum of crew members frozen in place. Every eye followed him, not because he was a star, but because they had just seen a man walk through a fire and come out without a single burn. Stallone didn't speak. He didn't need to. Producers whispered frantically into headsets. Someone from PR trailed him nervously with a clipboard, trying to keep pace. But Stallone moved like a freight train, steady, deliberate, immune to detours. In the green room, his publicist looked up from her phone. "Wide-eyed, you're trending," she said, blinking. "I mean, you're #1, worldwide." Stallone didn't even turn behind him. The stage was chaos. Jimmy stood under the lights, pretending it hadn't just happened, reading lines off the teleprompter with a voice full of counterfeit. Cheer. But nobody was listening. Not in the studio, not online, not in Hollywood, because social media had ignited, like dry leaves catching fire. #Late Night Meltdown, #Rocky vs. Jimmy, #Respect Stallone clips were already circulating raw, unedited, looped with dramatic music and subtitles in multiple languages. TikTok edits layered Stallone's walkout over footage of real boxing matches. Instagram reels were cutting to black as Stallone delivered line after line with the weight of a man who'd lived every syllable, and the comments, a tsunami. This wasn't an interview. This was a masterclass in dignity. Jimmy tried to be cute. Stallone reminded him what real pain looks like. He didn't walk out. He stood up. Respect isn't given. It's earned. And tonight, Stallone earned it all over again. Then came the celebrities. Denzel Washington tweeted a single word, legend. Viola Davis posted a photo of Stallone mid-sentence, captioned, "This is craft." Martin Scorsese broke his usual silence on late-night television. They should teach that moment in film school, not for technique, but for truth. Meanwhile, inside the studio, the mood had turned to panic. Kimmel's executive producer barged into the dressing room red-faced. What the hell just happened out there? Jimmy pulled at his tie, eyes darting. He turned it into a TED Talk. You turned it into a war zone. Jimmy bristled. Oh, come on. I've done this bit with 100 guests. You poke, they laugh, we move on. Yeah, the producer snapped. Well, tonight, you poked a bear who's been carrying a nation's hope on his back since '76, and he bit back. Jimmy grabbed a bottle of water, drained it, tossed it aside. He's overreacting. He's always been sensitive. Sensitive. The producer's voice rose. He told the world, your show has no soul. And the worst part, they believe him. No phone, just him staring into the mirror. His reflection wasn't angry, it wasn't triumphant, it was tired, but clear. A knock at the door, he didn't move. The door cracked open. Jimmy's assistant peeked in outside. Jimmy wants to talk. Off camera, no response. The assistant lingered. He says he wants to clear the air. Man-to-Man Stallone's voice came calm and cool. Tell him I've already said what matters. On camera, the door shut again. Back. Out in the hallway, Jimmy paced. You told him what? He's not coming out. Jimmy cursed under his breath. Then he turned and walked fast past crew members down the side hallway and toward Stallone's door. He knocked once, firm, nothing. Opened it anyway. Stallone looked up slowly. Jimmy stepped inside and shut the door behind him. You trying to tank my show? He asked. No preamble, no warmth. Stallone raised an eyebrow. Your show thought it belonged to the people who tune in. Jimmy laughed bitterly. You could have pulled me aside, said something. Instead, you staged a hit. You staged it, Stallone replied. I just refused to play along. Jimmy sat, but not comfortably. Do you know what it's like, live TV? Every second matters. Every second has to land. I push guests. That's the job. And I answer, Stallone said. That's mine. Silence. Jimmy leaned forward. You humiliated me. Stallone's face stayed still. No, he said. You did that yourself. Jimmy slammed a hand down on the table. I gave you a platform, and I brought my truth. Stallone snapped, back eyes flashing. You didn't like it because it didn't come with a punchline. The tension in the room spiked. Two grown men. No camera now, no audience, just raw pride. Jimmy lowered his voice. You made me look like a joke. What? Made you look like a man who doesn't listen. Another silence, and then Jimmy, tired, bitter, almost pleading now, asked the question that had been hanging in the air since the moment Stallone stood up. Why did you do it? Stallone looked up, and for the first time there was emotion, not anger. Not even hurt conviction, double quotes, because I've spent 40 years being a symbol of grit, of getting back up. And tonight, I realized, if I sat through your monologue and said nothing, I wouldn't just be disrespecting myself. Paused. I'd be lying to every person who ever saw themselves in me. Jimmy looked away. Couldn't argue that. Didn't even try. Outside the room, a producer whispered into a mic. We need to go to damage control. No edits, no laugh tracks, just truth. And in a matter of minutes, the entire internet was ablaze. News outlets chimed in. The View did a Hot Topics segment. Howard Stern weighed in live. Jake Tapper called it a cultural moment. The Washington Post wrote, when Jimmy tried to humiliate a fighter, he forgot one thing. Some fighters never put the gloves down. And just as the buzz hit its peak, Variety dropped a story that blew the lid off everything. Sources inside. ABC confirmed late-night staff already discussing fallout from Stallone confrontation. That wasn't a guest. That was an intervention. back in Stallone's dressing room, trying to cut him down. He wasn't trying to win. He was offering a truth. "You don't have to mock pain to be funny," Stallone said. "You can still be sharp, still be bold, but maybe, next time, try being honest too." Number 2. Theatrics. Just quiet dignity. And for the first time since the segment began, Jimmy didn't say a word. The silence was deafening. The air in the studio, once filled with laughter and applause, now felt like glass fragile and ready to shatter with the slightest sound. Sylvester Stallone didn't blink. He sat still, statuesque in his seat, jaw clenched, eyes locked on Jimmy Kimmel like he was peering through him into something deeper. This wasn't just a late-night interview anymore. This was Stallone's reckoning. Not with Jimmy, not even with the cameras, but with the very industry that had once devoured him whole and spit him back out when it was done. Jimmy finally found his voice, though it cracked. "Look, Sly, I didn't mean to disrespect you. That was never the goal." Stallone let out a slow exhale, eyes narrowing slightly. "But that's the thing, isn't it? You don't have to mean to hurt someone for it to still cut." He paused. The words hung in the air like smoke. "You know what it's like, Jimmy, to fight your way up from nothing? I was sleeping in a bus terminal when I wrote Rocky, sold my dog to keep eating. You sit in that chair, and you mock it, all like it, was some kind of Hollywood accident." The audience was silent. Even the camera crew had stopped moving. Jimmy blinked. "I wasn't mocking you. I was trying to be funny. That's my job." Stallone's voice dropped, gravel rough. "Your job is to know the line." And you crossed it, with a flashback montage played silently in the minds of the viewers watching at home. Jimmy, years ago, doing an exaggerated Stallone impression on The Man Show, slurring lines from Rambo like a drunk parody. Then clips of late-night jabs, Stallone's mumbling more than ever. Did they subtitle Creed just for him? The audience had always laughed. Stallone never had. Back on set, Jimmy looked stunned. "Is that what this is about? Old jokes?" Stallone leaned forward slowly. "No, this is about respect. Something you give to legends when they walk in your building." The temperature in the room dropped. Jimmy tried to rally, his comedic instincts fighting to save him. "You're a legend. Of course you are. Everyone knows it." "You don't say it," Stallone interrupted. "You mock it. That's the problem. With people like you, Jimmy, you hide behind irony, behind sarcasm. You think just because you're wearing a suit and you say it with a smile, it's not poison." Jimmy's mouth opened, but he had no words. Stallone continued, voice thickening. "You know how many nights I cried in the 80s thinking I was done? Thinking the whole world had moved on from me. And every time I fought back, not for the Oscars, not for the fame, for the dignity of it." His hand pressed flat on Jimmy's desk. "You don't get to laugh at that." The audience, still silent, was on the verge of something. No one knew what. Then Jimmy finally broke. "You're right?" 3 words, and suddenly the entire atmosphere shifted. Not with relief, not with comfort, but with truth. "You're right," he repeated, looking Stallone dead in the eyes. "I've taken cheap shots. I've made fun of people who didn't deserve it. I thought if I did it with a wink, it was okay. But maybe it wasn't." The audience shifted in their seats. Stunned, Stallone didn't speak. "I'm sorry," Jimmy added. Another silence. And then, after what felt like a full minute, Stallone gave a single nod. Small, barely there, but enough. The moment was raw, undeniable. And then, in that very next second, the teleprompter crew quietly switched back on. The producer gave the signal. The show had to continue, but no one watching would ever forget what had just happened. As the credits started to roll, Stallone stood, not a word, just stood. Offered his hand to Jimmy, who stood to wand, shook it. The studio erupted into applause. But not the wild, screaming kind. It was the kind of applause you hear at a memorial or at a standing ovation after a hard-earned comeback. Full of emotion, full of weight. Stallone stepped off stage, no backward glance, just quiet. Later that night, clips of the confrontation exploded across Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Hashtags trended worldwide. #Stallone, vis Kimmel, #respect the legend, #Jimmy crossed the line. Sly Speaks Truth. Media outlets dissected every second of the footage. Pundits and fans took sides. Hollywood insiders whispered about the long-overdue cultural shift this could trigger. And somewhere, watching it all from the quiet of a private home theater, Stallone sat alone with a glass of bourbon. He didn't smile, but there was peace in his silence. 1 week later, Jimmy Kimmel opened his monologue, not with a joke but with a story about resilience, about humility, about the cost of laughter. When it turns into cruelty, he didn't name Stallone directly. He didn't need to, and Stallone. He didn't do a press tour, didn't post a response, didn't ride the wave. He didn't have to, because that night, under the studio lights in front of millions, he reclaimed something Hollywood almost took from him: his voice, his story, his respect. Final frame: Stallone walking away from the camera. The words fade in over black legends. Don't ask for respect, they command it. If you made it this far, like, share, and subscribe. Because in a world that often rewards mockery and performance, standing for truth, legacy, and dignity matters more than ever. Stay tuned. The fight isn't over.